careful what I say, but that I won't be able to show, my children.
This week, a specific demand from the Sussex legal team has ignited a fierce constitutional debate. The core of this dispute is not a trade agreement or a military treaty, but a 4-page application to renew 2 British passports. The names recorded on those documents are Archie Harrison Mountbatten Windsor and Lilibet Diana Mountbatten Windsor. This demand was reportedly directed personally by Meghan Markle's attorneys, with the firm backing of Prince Harry. At the center of this constitutional firestorm is not a piece of legislation, but a seemingly routine administrative request that carries the weight of the monarchy's future. The renewal of 2 British passports. These are no ordinary travel documents. They belong to Archie Harrison Mountbatten Windsor and Lilibet Diana Mountbatten Windsor, managed under the direct guidance of Meghan Markle's high-powered legal representatives and supported by a resolute yet increasingly anxious Prince Harry. A formal application was delivered to His Majesty's Passport Office and the Privy Council earlier this week. That application contains a clause that has reverberated through the royal establishment, the immediate addition of the HRH, His or Her Royal Highness, prefix on the children's official travel documents. With a high-profile private visit to Australia scheduled for April, Meghan's legal team has issued a pointed ultimatum. They have demanded that Princess Anne, who currently oversees the formal recognition of titles and royal administrative procedures alongside the Royal Council, resolve this administrative discrepancy no later than the 29th of March. The Sussex legal representatives have gone as far as threatening the palace with accusations of institutional interference and deliberate intimidation, asserting that by withholding the HRH designation, the Crown is actively placing the safety of the King's grandchildren at risk. The Sussex argument is as strategic as it is emotionally charged. They contend that HRH status functions as a birthright shield. By securing these 3 letters now, they claim they are preserving their children's freedom to determine their own futures upon reaching adulthood, allowing them the choice to enter state duties or navigate the world as internationally protected individuals. The answer to why this matters so profoundly is both simpler and more complicated than it appears. Before we go any further, if you find that this channel delivers the kind of careful, unhurried royal coverage that is genuinely hard to find elsewhere, please take a moment to subscribe and turn on notifications. Because what I am about to walk you through over the next several minutes is the part of this story that most reporting has not yet reached. The reply from Buckingham Palace, coordinated under the increasingly firm leadership of King Charles III and Prince William, was swift, precise, and delivered through the measured authority of Princess Anne. Representing the Crown in the Royal Council, the Princess Royal has reportedly examined Meghan's motivations with considerable scrutiny, exposing what the palace regards as a carefully constructed trap. Princess Anne has brought into sharp focus the practical reality of what HRH status would genuinely mean for the Sussex family's planned April visit to Australia. Were the children to arrive on Australian soil under a royal prefix, they would activate a cascade of state-funded protections and privileges. RAVEC-level security arrangements would apply, mandatory, round-the-clock armed protection provided by the Australian Federal Police, funded entirely by Australian taxpayers. Diplomatic immunity and priority processing would follow. Use of the Royal Gate at airports, bypassing standard customs and immigration procedures, would become obligatory. State logistics, official motorcades, secure government-sanctioned accommodation would be required at public expense. Anne's analysis directs a sharp lens at the Sussex Women's Retreat in Sydney. While the Sussexes present this engagement as a philanthropic endeavor, the palace has drawn attention to the substantial VVIP ticket pricing, luxury suite requirements, and the clearly commercial character of the event. A palace source aligned with Anne's position noted quietly that to demand the privileges of a sovereign's representative for a paid entry engagement is not merely a breach of protocol, it is a violation of the Crown's fundamental integrity. Royal service, the palace's position holds, is a selfless commitment, not a commercial proposition. The palace has also responded to Meghan's claims of inconsistency. While the Sussexes point to the 2021 amendment of Archie's birth certificate, in which Rachel Meghan was replaced with Her Royal Highness the Duchess of Sussex, as evidence that the palace once insisted upon the title, Princess Anne has reframed that narrative entirely. The palace's position is that those amendments were made for the purposes of historical record consistency, not as a grant of commercial privilege. The principle of the post-Megxit era was restated with quiet finality. No longer working royals, no longer HRH. While the palace updated its official website in March 2023 to acknowledge the children as prince and princess following the 1917 letters patent, it has drawn a firm line at the HRH prefix. Keep that distinction in mind, because it becomes the legal foundation for everything that follows, and what follows is considerably more significant than a disagreement over 3 letters on a document. As the 29th of March deadline approaches, reports emerging from Montecito describe a deepening division within the Sussex household itself. While Meghan remains the determined architect of this legal campaign, Prince Harry is said to be held in place by a profound, visceral fear. Harry finds himself caught in a psychological vice. On one side is his documented anguish regarding the absence of adequate security for his late mother, Princess Diana. On the other is the painful reality of confronting his father and his brother in a legal arena. Sources suggest that while Meghan regards the HRH title as an essential component of the children's global standing, Harry's driving motivation is safety. Yet he is beginning to recognize that his wife's confrontational approach is rendering a security understanding with William increasingly unreachable. In a move of considerable strategic clarity, Princess Anne has publicly commended the Duke and Duchess of Edinburgh, Prince Edward and Sophie. Their children, despite holding a claim to royal styles, were raised to be self-sufficient, hardworking, and independent of the HRH designation. The Edinburgh approach, as Anne presents it, prepares the next generation to earn their place through dedication and service. The Sussex approach, in the palace's assessment, teaches the next generation to rely upon a crown they have effectively departed, in exchange for digital influence and brand recognition. As of today, the 27th of March, 2026, the palace's position is one of firm, unyielding neutrality. King Charles and Prince William have indicated they will not be pressured by threats of obstruction or shaped by public relations campaigns. The HRH designation remains a gift of the sovereign, reserved exclusively for those who represent the monarchy in an official, state-sanctioned capacity. The gates are not simply closed. They are being secured by an institution that places the continuity of the crown above the commercial ambitions of its departed members. Will the palace step back before the 29th of March? Every indication points firmly to no. Archie and Lilibet are, for the first time, confronting the genuine consequences of their parents' decisions. They are a prince and princess of a realm that has, for all practical purposes, drawn a clear boundary between itself and them. As the morning light rises over the landscaped grounds of their Montecito residence, the atmosphere inside the Sussex household is described by those familiar with the situation as one of purposeful defiance. While the first part of this story examined the legal HRH ultimatum delivered to the palace, this next part examines the true motivation behind the April Australian visit and the commercial enterprise Meghan Markle is constructing, an enterprise that depends upon the very royal prestige she publicly claims to have moved beyond. By late March 2026, Meghan's lifestyle brand, As Ever, the evolved successor to American Riviera Orchard, has fully developed from a digital concept into a multi-million-dollar operation. On the 6th of March 2026, BBC News and multiple outlets confirmed that Netflix had ended its commercial partnership with As Ever, leaving the Duchess to fund and develop the venture entirely independently. The brand's continued viability, however, depends upon a singular narrative: exiled royalty. To sustain the premium price points attached to her luxury organic preserves, artisan homeware, and wellness collections, Meghan requires the HRH prefix to appear alongside her children's public profiles. Without those 3 letters, Archie and Lilibet are, in the view of critical observers, celebrity children in a crowded marketplace. With them, they become the disinherited heirs of a 1,000-year-old throne, a story that travels extraordinarily well to a global audience. If you have stayed with me to this point, I think you already know that this channel takes these stories seriously. Please subscribe if you have not already done so, because what follows is the detail that repositions everything we have examined so far. The upcoming April visit to Australia has become the primary flashpoint for Princess Anne's recent counter-response. Organized by Jackie O. Henderson's event company and running from the 17th to the 19th of April at the Intercontinental Hotel in Coogee, Sydney, The engagement has been presented as a private women's wellness retreat. Early bird tickets are priced at 2,699 Australian dollars, with VIP access, including front row positioning and a group photograph with the Duchess, available at 3,199 Australian dollars. This has drawn considerable scrutiny from Buckingham Palace for a number of reasons. The ticket structure itself has raised questions about the nature of the event. The palace's concern, as articulated through Princess Anne's communications with the Royal Council, centers on the implied royal character of the engagement. Marketing materials have led to uncertainty among Australian officials regarding the level of state hospitality that might be anticipated. Princess Anne has characterized the tour as a commercial enterprise dressed in the language of royal philanthropy. Authentic royal tours, she has noted, are funded by the sovereign grant and the host nation because they are open to the public and directed toward diplomacy. By attaching a ticket price, the palace contends that the Sussex engagement has repurposed the crown's standing for private commercial gain. The reason the HRH prefix on the passports carries such practical urgency before April is specific and legal. If Archie and Lilibet travel with HRH on their documents, they are legally classified as state assets. This would compel the Australian government to grant diplomatic clearance, ensuring they bypass standard arrival procedures, and to provide high-level security through the Australian Federal Police, including motorcades, armed personnel, and perimeter management. Without that prefix, as the REVIC framework makes clear through its established rulings on the Sussex security case, those protections do not apply automatically. Any security arrangements during the April visit would fall entirely upon the Sussex family's own financial resources. In her most recent briefing to the Royal Council, Princess Anne drew a deliberate and public distinction between the Sussex children and those of the Duke and Duchess of Edinburgh. Lady Louise Windsor, now employed in a regular professional capacity in London, traveled to Australia the previous year as a private citizen, waited in the standard arrivals queue, and purchased a commercial airline ticket without requesting state assistance. James, Earl of Wessex, has similarly navigated his adult life without calling upon taxpayer-funded protection. The contrast the palace intends speaks for itself. And this is the part that most coverage has not yet connected properly. By insisting on the HRH designation for their children specifically for this Australian trip, Meghan and Harry have, according to sources close to the Royal Council, provided the British government with a precise and usable justification to advance broader legislative reform. The argument being developed within Westminster is direct. If the children's titles are being deployed in service of a commercial enterprise, wellness retreats with four-figure ticket prices, then those titles are functioning as private commercial instruments rather than as symbols of state representation. And those who use the instruments of the crown for private profit, the argument proceeds, cannot simultaneously claim a protected place within the functional line of succession. The succession question has moved from theoretical to active. The House of Commons Library confirmed on the 10th of March 2026 that Archie and Lilibet remain 6th and 7th in the line of succession, respectively. The government's consideration of legislative changes, initially prompted by the necessity of addressing Andrew Mountbatten Windsor's position following his February 2026 arrest, now contains provisions that would affect non-resident, non-working members of the royal family more broadly. Prime Minister Keir Starmer's government has indicated that action in this area is necessary. If a domicile and active service requirement were introduced, the practical effect for Archie and Lilibet, raised as private citizens in California, participating in commercial ventures through the A's Ever brand, would be to suspend their functional place in the succession for as long as those conditions persisted. Princess Anne has reportedly presented the April Australian retreat as Exhibit A in the case for that legislation. In a closed session with the Privy Council, she argued that the Sussexes are engaged in constructing a shadow institution, using royal titles to underwrite private services. One cannot, she is reported to have said, be a prince of the realm on Monday to sell a ticket to a wellness event and present as a victim of the crown on Tuesday to demand taxpayer-provided protection. The atmospheric consequences of this dispute have reached Australian soil. Both the Australian Department of the Prime Minister and Cabinet and the Department of Home Affairs have issued coordinated statements making clear that the Sussex visit is a private commercial engagement. The Australian government has confirmed no involvement in the logistics, funding, or official reception of the trip. There will be no formal greeting at the airport. There will be no meeting with the Governor General. There will be no state-funded security motorcade. A petition on change.org titled No Taxpayer Funding or Official Support for Harry and Meghan's Private Visit reached 36,000 signatures as of the 27th of March. Australian newspaper comment sections attracted responses of such intensity that moderators closed them, a measure almost never applied to royal coverage. The warm public reception the couple experienced during their 2018 tour has been replaced by a precise institutional scrutiny. As of today, the 27th of March, 2026, the passport standoff has reached its conclusion in all but formal announcement. King Charles III and Prince William have made their position clear. If you choose the life of a private entrepreneur operating from California, you walk that path without the crown's institutional shield. Archie and Lilibet, 7 and 4 years old respectively, are growing up in a world where their titles are regarded as commercial assets by their parents and as constitutional considerations by their grandfather. The HRH designation will not appear on their travel documents for April 3. The Great Severing, as some constitutional historians are already describing this period, is no longer a future possibility. It is an unfolding, present reality. Archie and Lilibet will arrive in Australia in April as the children of a high-profile couple, not as representatives of the king. The gates of Buckingham Palace have not simply been closed. They have been secured by a future king who sees no institutional accommodation for a shadow court operating from the California coast. If this kind of storytelling matters to you, been patient, detailed, and always respectful of the people at the center of these stories, please subscribe and share this video with someone who you think would appreciate it. It genuinely helps this channel continue doing this kind of work. This is not a story about 3 letters on a passport. At its heart, it is a story about what it costs a family, and specifically 2 children who had no part in making any of these decisions. When the institution that gave them their names decides that the responsibilities attached to those names are no longer being honored. Archie and Lilibet did not choose Montecito. They did not choose the As Ever brand. They did not choose the Sydney retreat, or the ticket prices, or the Netflix partnership. They were born into a position that carries both privilege and obligation, and the question of how those 2 things are balanced is being answered around them, not by them. The viewers watching this who have lived long enough to understand what it means to be caught in the middle of something larger than yourself, who have watched children carry the weight of adult decisions, those are the people I am thinking of as this story closes today. You have stayed because you know that behind the legal terminology and the constitutional frameworks and the passport office procedures, there are 2 small children whose place in the world is being defined by forces they cannot yet understand. The question I would like to leave with you is this. Do you think the palace's position that HRH is a designation of service rather than a birthright entitlement is the right principle to hold to? Or do you believe that 2 children should not be made to bear the institutional consequences of their parents' choices? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. I read every one of them, and this is precisely the kind of question worth sitting with.